because I am bad at that. Actually, when we outline, he'll do it first for structure, and then I'll rewrite it for details because I'm a little bit scatterbrained. But honestly, I think that when you have a bunch of ideas, that's kind of how it feels. It kind of feels like you have this like vortex in your head of just like a bunch of ideas, and none of them like are attached yet. What helps me, and this is where it gets like really just, it's kind of like personal preference, is actually writing things down physically. Like we do what we call a rough outline, which is where we essentially go, we're going to bullet point each thing in the book. So it's going to be like, okay, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. And anything we don't have an answer for, we leave a gap. We just go, okay, we know something needs to happen here, but we don't know what. We know something needs to happen here. And we keep doing that until we fill in all those gaps. And honestly, the way we do it is, I'm probably going to say it a lot today, but the question, just asking questions. And that's where the one thing about being a duo kind of helps is that if I don't have a question or don't have an answer to one, he has the question or has the answer. But that's where it's really important just to take time to ask yourself questions, ask yourself good questions, and just try and string together. Don't try and think of everything as needing to be very linear and needing to be just like strung together in a way that makes complete sense. Sometimes if you have a really good idea that you're like, I don't know how I get here, that's a good thing, because that means you are diverging onto a path that most people wouldn't have taken. And eventually, just enough of that, enough of jotting things down and asking questions and stuff, it kind of always gets me to where I need to go. I don't know. What about you?
I'll chime in. Thank you, Bryce. The outline is important where you leave the blanks and you're in that spot you're talking about where you have, you're like, I don't know what happens here. But I think that's where, like you said, it's asking questions, but it's also trying to get in the minds of the characters. Like, I think one of the things that you hear a lot is like, let the characters write the story for you. And that like doesn't mean anything most of the time.
It's like said that, but okay.
It's like, yeah, it doesn't mean anything most of the time, except for when Mark says it. But it's like, but when you can really do that is when you have those blanks and you say like, okay, well I know that this happens, and then something happens, and then they get somewhere else, and you know what the somewhere else is, and you know the thing before it, so you ask like, what would the characters be feeling in the situation? What would they be wanting to do? Like, what is something, and if that doesn't answer the question, like if there's nothing that they would do to get to the next event, just say like, okay, well why, how could that happen? Like, what is a reason they could end up in this next situation, this next scene that I have? Like you said, it really all boils down to just asking yourself questions and trying to figure it out, because that's how it's like, it's really hard to just, create in a vacuum, like the blank page thing. And so having a question to jump off of is a lot easier. And that's where having like those story beats that you want to get to, you just don't know how, that's where that helps, because like what questions to ask. It's already there. It's not like you're just starting from scratch. So I think that that's actually a good spot to be in.
To defend myself. So I actually agree with a lot of what they're saying, because basically what it sounds like is that you have like point A, point B, point C. How do I get from A to B and then from B to C? And what we've learned, Tim and I collaborating, is a lot of that connective tissue is the character work, because you have your big plot-oriented moments. Like when we do our breakdowns first, we work out a summary, and then we do page breakdowns to make sure that if we're doing a 60-page book, that's enough real estate for the story we want to tell. And sometimes that's where we have to do the trimming, or sometimes we have to do the bloating or whatever to get from A to B. We know like Act 1, we have this event. Act 2, we have this event. Act 3, we have this event. How do we get them from one event to the next? And just to give an example of a situation that happened to us was with Kamen America Volume 6. Tim and I worked out the outline, so we knew exactly the plot summary that we wanted, and then we did the page breakdowns, and then I scripted it, and we agreed on it every step of the way, but then, a plan falls apart when the mission actually starts, because then Tim was drawing it, and he was like, I know we agreed on all of this stuff, it's just something about it isn't working. It's too much plot and not enough character. It almost just seems like we're taking the reader by a hand and just saying, this is what happens next, this is what happens next, the plot moves forward here, something's missing. And so while Tim was drawing Act 1, I re-scripted Acts 2 and 3 on the fly, trying to like lay the track as the train was moving. And instead, we said, like, how are the characters going to move us from point A to point B? So instead of having some big fight scene in Act 2 that we had originally scripted, where they're just bouncing all over the country, just trying to basically keep up with the plot, we had them take a breather. The characters are all in a hotel room because they're traveling, and we're just watching what the characters do with each other, how they talk to each other, and those move the character plot. So you have like your major plot arc, but then you have your character arcs, and those can be just as interesting. I mean, a show like Cowboy Bebop has like the Vicious arc, and that's only like 4 episodes in the entire 26 episode series. The rest of the series is just watching these character arcs, finding out Faye's backstory, finding out Ed's backstory, and Spike's backstory, and how they all relate to each other. And that's all just as interesting as the larger story arc. And a lot of your readers will come in, and that's what they want. That's, to them, the meat and potatoes is what the characters are doing, while others, the meat and potatoes is what's the big picture. And so if you give yourself those moments, those smaller moments where the characters are interacting with each other, that will give you the solution that you need to move you from A to B. It's like, oh, well, this character has a connection to another character who's involved with the larger plot. How do they interact with each other, and how does that, and then all of a sudden you've got your bridge from A to B or B to C. And it isn't moving quite so frenetically, and sometimes slowing down actually helps out a lot.
So I've sort of been blessed because I have a wife who I know loves me and wants the best for me, but she's also able to be like, why are you such an idiot? And why did you do this? It should be this, and it should be that, and it should be that. And I'm like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. And so she takes care of it. She's basically the puppet master, and I'm a giant fraud. My wife is really behind Soulfinder, but when she isn't there to help me out with these questions, like these guys were saying, it's really about asking yourself the right questions. So if you're stuck for too long, it could be you're asking the wrong questions and then you're getting the wrong answers, and you need to ask yourself different questions. And as they all said, there's certain things that are, you have to get from point A to point B, but you also know that you have to work within the confines of the character and their personality and their motivations. And so again, it's what is the logical thing that this person would do in this situation that could actually get me to this point on the creative map where I'm trying to go. And usually if you just think about it for long enough time, you'll get 5 possibilities, and then you pick the best one. Or sometimes it's good to just put it in the shelf for a couple days and step away from it because you're thinking too much about it and you're beating yourself up, and just relax. Just go for a bike ride or something like that for a couple days and chill out, and then come back to it, and then sometimes the answer will come to you. But ultimately, it's really about just asking the right questions, and eventually you'll get there. You just have to have a little bit of patience with yourself.
Over there in the back, yes.
So how do you manage between working on the comic and full-time job?
This guy knows our deepest lore. So we have full-time jobs as well. That's a lot of people. Some people know it, not a lot of people do. Mark and I still work. I'm an audiologist, and he works at a university. We use a lot of time management is what it boils down to. So that just means that I have about 15, 16 working hours a day, and I have to decide on when do I sleep, when do I eat, and what things can I cut out. So hobby-wise, I don't have a lot of hobbies because that has to go out the window if I know I need to do a page a day, which is my workflow. I pride myself on not much other than being a hard worker, so I do think my work ethic is good. I sleep an average of 4 hours a night, and like I said, not many hobbies, but one thing I do, and this is why I was picking Scott's brain on our way here the other day. I was asking him, like, what do you do to work faster? Because a page would normally take me about 10 hours a day, but ever since I got like Procreate for my iPad, I was able to cut that down to like 8 hours a day. And from that point, I started using brushes to help with things like backgrounds and things. So now I can do a page in typically 6 hours. So I'm always trying to find ways to work more efficiently and to use my time wisely. That's what it really boils down to. And in comics, and it's a larger discussion that would have to take up in their panel, but in comics, the beauty of it is there are a lot of artist and writing tricks that you can do, and they never fail because they're built into the medium. For example, Mark will tell you that when you're writing, you always leave your surprise for the even numbered page. If you read a book that's a horror book, and they don't do this, that means that the writer is not good, because it's writing 101. Comics is a medium. It is not just storyboards from a movie put into 32 pages. If someone tells you that, they're just trying to pitch to Netflix. They don't know how comics works. If you're writing a horror book, or if it's something like us where there's a reveal of a villain, you don't put that on the odd-numbered page, because when you flip the page, you can already see what's happening over there. You put it on the even page, so when they get to it, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. And in comics, as the artist, Scott and I will both agree on this, when you're doing a background, for example, and you know that the characters are going to be, let's say, here in panel room D for 2 pages, you just have to draw the background one time. And the rest of the time, you have like the same background and you blur it out, or you put just a little bit of detail, because the human brain, it revolves around pattern recognition. It knows, okay, the characters are in panel room D. As you're reading 2 pages, it's not paying attention to the background anymore. That's gone. It knows
I would
over.
not want to draw all of these chairs.
We do not want to draw all these chairs, and as much as we like it, we don't want to draw each of you all the time. So you'll notice they do this in manga a lot, where what they'll do is they'll draw this crowd scene, but then as you look at the panels, they don't have any features anymore. The people go into the background and they're either half toned out or whited out, or they're just silhouettes, because the brain is smart. The brain knows, well, I don't need to see these people all the time. I know that they're there. And so as I'm working, I ask myself, okay, I didn't get much sleep last night. My wife is working today, so that means I have to do a lot of errands and things. I gotta finish this page in 5 hours. Shortcut time. What can I do to manage my time wisely? And Mark and I and all of us, we're on social media, but you'll notice that we don't mess around a lot. I mean, we'll do an interview here and there, but we don't live stream a lot. We don't try and get into arguments a lot. We just try to kind of hunker down, and it's like, okay, I've looked at Twitter for about 20 minutes. It's over. I gotta go and work, because I got better things to do than mess around. So that's the most important thing. One reason why manga artists in Japan dominate is because their work ethic makes us look like we're lazy people, because they're just constantly hustling. They don't have any time for anything, much less social media. And so I would say that for any person who's a writer or an artist, if you really want to perfect your craft, you gotta manage your time wisely, and you gotta devote all your time that you have in your spare time to just working on that.
Just from the writer's point of view, about time management is so, as Bryce was talking about, outlines I found are the most important thing. Tim and I, we workshop a summary, which is just all of our notes collaborated into a linear plot synopsis, a bunch of paragraphs. Then if I'm doing a book that's 60 pages, then I do the page breakdowns next, where I just take that summary and I break it up, like page 1 this happens, page 2 this happens, 3, 4, 5. And then once I have pages 1 through 60 all outlined, then the scripting goes so much easier and so much faster, because I'm never having to think about what happens next. I've already worked that out in advance. And then when I have to do the scripting, it's like, okay, well, it's a 60-page book. If I can script 5 pages a day, then I can have it done in 12 days. That's 2 weeks. I can have the script to 10 in 2 weeks. So I know my deadline. I know how many pages I have to do every day. And then it's just like, all right, if I don't write 5 pages a day, then I didn't do my full day's worth of writing. If I only wrote 4 pages one day, then I got to write 6 pages the next day, because I got to get it done in 2 weeks. And so just breaking down and compartmentalizing how you spend your time, it makes it a lot easier. It makes it go a lot faster. And once you have a rapport, like with your artist, then it's pretty much, I don't want to say assembly line, because that then makes it sound like, we're the McDonald's of comics. But if you have it down to a pattern, if you have it down to a science, then you never get caught up. You're never late. You can always hit your deadlines, even if you do work a full-time job every day like we do.
We have 2 minutes left, so unless there's any really quick questions, anyone has a really quick question. Let's go with you sir.
Okay, so with all that time management, how are you doing that? How do you manage that with Doug Ernst doing in the mix with your crossovers?
Basically, he's good at time management too. I mean, we all make our deadlines, and so whenever we do crossovers, a lot of that is pre-planning. So I mean, we don't just do the crossover willy-nilly, and it's just like a 1-week procedure. I mean, it took years. Soulfinder, at the time, people were asking, are you guys going to do a crossover? And we never gave an answer, because we said, if it's not part of the story, then we don't want to force it. We found an opening. Essentially, something happened in our story where we started introducing the supernatural element, and because we did that organically, we said, now the readers will buy it. If we had done that from the get-go, they probably would have thought this is really far-fetched, like to have this sudden crossover. Our book is, I mean, we have a book for everyone, whether you're 5 years old or 50 years old, we have something for you. But Doug's book is more catered to young adults. Ours is catered more towards teenagers, so people would say, well, this book's more serious, our book's more lighthearted. I just don't see the two of them meshing together. But over years of time, he developed the story organically, we developed one organically, so by the time that they crossed over, people weren't surprised. They were like, oh, okay, that's the way it is, and it makes perfect sense. Real quick, so we want to thank everyone for coming to our panel. These gentlemen have come from a long way. We drove from Arkansas, even though I lived here in Belden for 6 years. It was some of the best years of my life, and my wife was a resident, was doing a residency over at Baylor Scott & White, and we loved it. It's great. Mr. Scott and Mr. Bryce, they both came here from Kentucky, and Mr. Ernst came here from Reno, Nevada. So we want to say 6 years of Bell County Comic Con going strong, and it's getting better and better every time. So thank you for being here. We are going to be at the Iconic Comics panel all day today and tomorrow. So if you have any questions, be sure to stop by, say hello. We're in Hall A. If you got the VIP bags, if you have your lanyards, we did all the intellectual property art for all of them. We'll be more than happy to sign autographs and answer any questions that you have. So have a good day and great weekend here at Bell County Comic Con. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you guys downstairs.
Thank you.